Welcome to the Not On My Watch podcast, where real-life issues facing the family and the church are addressed with bold and uncompromising truth. It's time to reject the mediocrity of the day, live courageously in the face of danger, and declare, Not On My Watch. Here are your hosts, Jeff and Rochelle Ferguson.
Hey, welcome to the Not On My Watch podcast, and we're excited. We are excited to talk to you today. Today's an important episode. I really believe that.
Oh, we've been talking about this for a while, about how just important, what we're about ready to share with you is so important, and I would say urgent. I want to tell every person watching, every parent watching, this is so huge what we're about ready to
Yeah, so we've been looking, yep. And here's the title. Let's just jump in, okay? The tripod of your kid's life. And if I were listening to that, I'd be like,
okay,
I have no idea what this lady's talking about. What a weird title. And it is, I guess, but it really makes a lot of sense when you begin to unpack it and you look at what is impacting, what is holding up, what is shaping your child's life.
Yep. So when we talk about the tripod, we're talking about three elements that make up your kid's life. And those three elements, very quickly, are the home, the church, and school. Home, church, and school.
And really, we're talking about the tripod. Why? Okay, so Jeff and I, we love going to coffee shops. It's something we do.
Yes. It's a
hobby. We need help. Yes. Intervention. No, I'm just kidding. And so we enjoy getting a cup of coffee, even if it's just like a black cup of coffee. We don't have to have all this frou-frou, although occasionally we'll get those things. Anyways.
Sugar plum latte. Sorry.
Okay, so we digress. Okay, so anyways, when we go there, I've noticed this when I go to coffee shops or when I'm going in eating at places, I see this too, that a lot of the cafe tables have 3 legs that hold them up, not 4. And so I know this is like bizarre thing to research, but I did a little bit of research on cafe tables, and I know.
We're going to open up a coffee.
Literally go through my search history. It's like, why do you search these things? I just like to know. I don't know. I have this thirst for knowledge. Okay. And really, a 3-legged table is more sturdy than a 4-legged table. And I find that to be interesting. And the real reason it is because the ground below, if it's unstable or if it's not level, the 3 legs are able to adapt and keep the table at a sturdier place than 4 legs. I mean, you could think about this. You go out and eat and you get like the 4-legged thing and it's toppling and then you put the napkin underneath.
Yeah.
And it's like, this isn't working. But the 3-legged table, it can adapt to that. And, of course, we can, think about that principle. And when we take that and we apply this to our kids, this is powerful. See, we're raising kids. Yep. You are raising kids. Maybe you're raising grandparents or grandkids. Maybe you just are influencing young people's lives. If you're a teacher, educator, pastor, you care about the next generation. There are some things that we can do in this unstable world to bring some stability to our kids' lives.
And I think that illustration is so important for us. To me, it's vivid because we often want to make the ground level. We want to say, hey...
Or like we focus on that. Let's get that ground level.
When the culture kind of equals out, when everything...
When we win the culture war.
Calms down. I say this a lot, but we're not here, as followers of Christ, we're not here to win a culture war. If you look at Scripture, in fact, God's people have always been placed in times of tumultuousness or chaos. Yeah. But what He's equipped us to do is how to function in that chaos so that we can live lives that are strong, that we can live resilient lives in the midst of adversity, whether it be cultural adversity, political adversity, anything. And so what we're going to talk about today can be done in the midst of, we're not even going to hit culture. Is in the sense that
that's not really the point.
Because the point is not to change the culture. The point is to say, how can we act and live as Christ followers in the midst of an uneven world and an uneven culture? Because it's not going to even out.
Right. The world we live in
Yes.
is unfair.
Yes.
The world we live in is not trying to please Christ.
Yes.
The world we live in is not going to bring stability to our children. All you have to do is turn the news on. And that's not our point, is to sit here and to berate culture.
Yes.
But our point is we are mandated by Christ to raise up a generation that beyond ourselves who are standing firm and in this uneven ground that they've been given, this uneven world. And, this is going to take these three legs, like these three pillars, these three institutions, but God ordained vehicles to bring stability and to show his glory in this way. So huge. So let's look at the facts. This is a fact-based podcast. And we did the math and we triple checked it.
We did.
We triple checked it to really say, okay, we've got to know what we're talking about. So we can talk about these three things, and that's great, but really what's going on. So we looked at the average school age child. So this is somebody who's in kindergarten through 12th grade, and they're in school full time. And we did some math on where are they spending their time, just to give you some idea of how important these pillars are. So taking the number of hours in a year and then looking on average, how many hours kids spend at school, how many days of year they're in school, all of these kind of things. And here's what we've come up with. Around 21.5%. And again, these are based upon like 7 hours a day at school.
Yes.
That kids are spending in their year about 21 to 22% of their life at school.
This is not extracurricular. This is just in school during school hours.
Like the 8 to 3 or whatever, whatever your school time. Now, I want to, when you're going, I'm going to check that math. We did take out 8 hours a night for sleeping. We are talking waking hours.
Because
here.
You do need sleep.
Well, hopefully your kids have a bedtime. That will be another podcast.
Exactly.
We can talk about that. Your kids need sleep for their brain development, body development.
Yep.
We need sleep, right? Like this is important. That is a different podcast, but we did remove 8 hours a day for sleep. So these are waking hour times. So around 22% of your kids' year is spent at school.
Wow.
This is a huge number. And there's a lot of things that we're going to unpack as we go through about this. This is just giving you the facts. Now, church.
Okay, church. Did the math. 3.5% of children's time is spent at church. Now, there's a caveat to this. Because this is probably a generous figure.
It is a generous figure.
It is a generous figure. So we just calculated.
This is based upon your child spending 4 hours a week at church. Now, that's the amount of time that our kids spend at church. We did the math. We have midweek service, which would be like a midweek Bible study for kids. We have Sunday school. We have Sunday service. And so those were how we came up with 4 hours. This is a very generous amount. We realize that the average person who professes Christ is not spending 16 hours a month in church.
And probably less than that, according to whatever statistic you read, whatever research you read. The churchgoer who's committed could go 2 to 3 times a month.
Right. So when we
2 to 3
say
weeks a month. Yeah.
Right. So this is a very generous figure, but we're just going to go with it there. So just letting you know where we got the numbers from. So 3.5% of a child's year is spent in church.
So let's go to the home.
Yes. So where does that leave us? So this leaves us with 75% of the time that your child has in a year of waking hours is spent at home. Now, that doesn't mean they're staying like in the confines of your home. This is
on the couch in the home, just staring.
No, this is, where, parents are maybe running errands together or going even to sporting events or things like that. It's not in school or in church. And so this is kind of that pie chart breakdown of your kid's life. And I don't know about you, but it shocked me. I think it's important to just look at those numbers.
I looked at these numbers and I could still look at them and just continue to make a whole bunch of different conclusions, a whole bunch of different, kind of just a lot of questions come in my mind. Then I start jumping to solutions and all these things and trying to figure out, okay, what does this mean for me and my family? What does this mean for the people that we have influence over? And so that's kind of what we're asking. What does this communicate to us? Someone may be thinking, okay, great. There's the numbers. You did the math. So what? Why should these numbers matter as we think about the lives of our kids?
Well, for me, there's a couple of things that I take away from this. And, I look at when you do like data analyzation or whatever, you could sit there and you could say, well, okay, 3.5% of the time is spent at church. So does it matter?
It's not that much.
It's only 20% of the time that kids are 22% of the time that they're at school. So, is it statistically important? And the reality is that we're not talking just about the equality of time to measure the equality of importance. Although I do think we can make some correlations there. I think that's important. But we wouldn't come away from this and go, well, church doesn't matter. It's only making up 3.5% of my kids' time. Yep. But the reality is that the view that your children have of church will end up informing their view of God himself.
Absolutely.
And so we can't just look at these numbers and go, well, this is what matters most and this is what doesn't matter most. I think the point of these numbers is to sit there and go, okay, all of these three together make up 100%.
Yes.
And so we ought to not fall into a pattern of thinking that this one is separate from this one, that's separate from this one. These three are all working together, or they should. And that's what we're going to talk about. There are oftentimes, they are not.
Right.
There's actually competing worldviews that are happening. And we wonder why there's instability.
Yes.
Because we have three legs that are not working together. And that is why we are in the place that we are in. That's why Not On My Watch exists. That's what we're passionate about.
Yeah. And like you said, going along with that, these three institutions, they're shaping the lives of your kids. You said it earlier, but what they're doing is that they are forming your children spiritually. Even if you may say, well, no, they're not, because I don't go to church.
The fact that you don't go to church is informing your children's life.
Anywhere we go, anything we do, we are spiritual beings. Whether we like it or not, God created us. We're spiritual. We are being formed spiritually. Our character is being formed. Our character is formed, you've heard me say this before, by your closest relational attachments. So those relational attachments in those places that your kids are at, their character, they're literally the right side of their brain, their character, their identity part of their brain is being formed. So when a child comes home and says certain things, it's not like, oh, they just decided to say it one day. It's their deepest parts of them is being formed by their environment that they're in. Church, school, home. I mean, God set these up, and so they are intrinsic to who we are as people, and they are continuing to form us one way or another.
Okay, so ready for the controversy. Here it is.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Can you take it?
I
understand that this is controversial, and I understand. I get it that there are people that are going to be watching this podcast that disagree. Let's chat about it. Send an email, Rochelle at notonmywatch.co. Okay, or if you're mad at Jeff, send it to him.
at notonmywatch.co. Go ahead.
Okay, so either way, let's talk about it. But here's the deal: all three of these are forming your kids, whether you like it or not. All three of these: the home, the family, and the church. And if these three are not teaching the same thing, your kids are being confused.
Oh man!
If these three are not standing for the same thing, if they're not flowing in the same way, if there is incongruency in these three areas, there will be confusion, and there also will be issues that will come as a result of this confusion. Mm-hmm. And I know, so what you just heard me say, if I break it down, is that your home should be teaching a biblical worldview. Mm-hmm. Your church should be championing a biblical worldview. And your school
Yes.
should be teaching a biblical worldview.
Yeah.
And so what you just heard me say is if you're sending your kids to public school and expecting them to teach what you are teaching, you're going to be disappointed with the results.
And you're going to find yourself, you're at an uphill battle because you're teaching your kid biblical worldview from the home, putting them in a public school environment that is really, it's not tolerating your worldview. It's fighting against it.
It's assaulting your worldview.
It's assaulting your worldview, fighting against it.
And they're spending 22% of their life in a year there. I mean, that's why we shared those numbers.
Yes.
Because these are so key. I know the objections. I understand. And you're talking to two people. We both spent at least for sure, the vast majority of our educational upbringing in public schools.
Yes.
I went to a Christian school for 2 years. You were homeschooled for 1 year.
1 year, second grade, and then when given the opportunity, I went back to public school. So
yes. And so, we're coming from the fact that we are products of public school education. We went to public school. Things have changed.
We cannot assume that how we grew up is how things are now. It's not the same, and it's not even just a little worse. It's radically different.
And we need to be aware. I mean, like technology, things like this. But you might say, well, my school we're in the Bible Belt. We're in the Bible Belt, so you do not have to worry about what's being taught. I know on the coast they need to worry about it, but these are things that you need to be aware of in the town that we live right near. Okay.
Yep.
We encountered people, teachers, putting up flags that are contrary to biblical worldview and flying them in their classroom.
That's why when people say, that's kind of a trigger for me. You said that. It's kind of a trigger about, well, we're in the Bible Belt. We don't deal with the same things they do on the coast. Well, we live in the Bible Belt. And I'm telling you, sin can operate in the Bible Belt. And in fact, not only can it does operate. Sin doesn't work. We'd be really sorely mistaken if we think sin works on the coast. It works in the Bible Belt. In fact, I would say that sin works best under the cover of what appears to be maybe more moral. I'm not really sure. But the places that we are living are still being impacted by teaching that is not according to Scripture. Social emotional learning in public schools are pushing agendas that go against a biblical view of sexuality, that go against a biblical view of your very kid's identity, and they're spending 22% of their time there.
So this is huge. Yeah. So what is all this? Why does this matter? Why do you talk about this? What all of this? A couple of points that I think are important to talk about in today's podcast. These facts, this reality that all three of these are forming your child's spiritual life, their whole well-being. This should inform every decision that we make. Kids should not be making these decisions. Adults should be.
These are adult decisions. You're right.
And so
Absolutely.
Many times we say, well, my kid wants to go here. Well, my kid also would like to eat ice cream for every meal, but I'm not going to let them because that's not healthy for them. And so we should not expect kids to know what they need spiritually. I mean, I've heard this so many times. My kid doesn't like this church. We're going to go to this church. Your kid doesn't know what they need.
They don't know what they want. And
they don't know what they need. They know what they want.
Well, you're right. They know what they want.
But they don't know what they need.
You're exactly right.
And so if kids are being allowed to determine what church you're attending, or if kids... Now, am I saying you should ignore your kids if they're saying, like, they don't teach the Bible here? I mean, I'm not saying don't listen to kids, but parents with spiritual maturity, a little bit of wisdom along the way, hopefully, they should be making these decisions.
Oh, absolutely. Parents, can I say, we need to rise to the occasion, and we need to be parents. We need to lead. We need to wake up. Let's stop sleepwalking, and let's lead our children into a life for their health, their spiritual vitality, for their intellectual flourishing. Seriously, so that they can be everything God wants them to be.
Absolutely. Okay, so these should inform our decisions, but not only that, not like our overarching decision, like what church to attend or what school to go to, but these facts and this idea of these three legs that are holding up your child spiritually should inform our daily decisions.
Every single
So
day.
not just the overarching, but those daily decisions. A couple of examples would be like, hey, I'm tired. I kind of want to sleep in this Sunday. Let's not go to church. Whoa. So we are going to take away from just that measly 3.5% of the time, and we're going to go down to 3% because we're going to sleep in a couple of Sundays.
Yeah.
Or, we don't really need to take our kids to that midweek thing. It's just discipleship. So then all of a sudden you're spending 1% of your time in church. I mean, these are huge, huge decisions.
And they have cumulative effects.
That's right.
And so when you miss here, you miss there, cumulatively what you're doing is you're negatively impacting the spiritual life of your family, yourself, and your kids, because you're making a decision in the moment because I'm just tired. You know what? Let's take a nap in the afternoon.
Well, you think about it too. I mean, I hear this a lot from moms. I don't know that dads necessarily talk about these things.
I'm not on any mom groups.
But I hear this a lot from moms, my baby doesn't really understand, and plus they're just going to cry, and I'm not going to take him to the nursery, so we'll just watch online. We are underestimating the importance of your child, an infant, and what they can learn. We underestimate the importance of what your child learns and is exposed to and begins to value. At a young age.
Those statements, and I've heard those statements, come from people who don't understand how our brain develops. And our brain develops in various ways. That's why they say is even in your utero, babies, they hear singing and they can tell if there's a warm environment. We learn.
Yes.
So children are learning even far above their ability to just verbalize what they're learning.
Thank you. Yes.
So I think just because a child can't verbalize like maybe you and I could,
things are happening.
Things are happening. They're learning. They're catching things. They're catching just they're learning. And I think it's to underestimate brain development, and we need let's do the research. Read how the brain develops. I love reading it because it's very interesting, and we don't know the detriment we're causing to even just our kids' development, spiritualized, but even our neurologically when we say, nah.
It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with that. I think some other things that I can take away from some of this is, we're not just looking at, how much time is spent in one, but let me just tell you, the home will always be the primary place of spiritual development.
Yes.
The home will always be the primary place of spiritual growth.
We view it as our job. We can't say, okay, you know what, we're going to kind of do whatever here, but then we're going to hope that the Christian school, or we're going to hope that the church really, brings it up and really starts to disciple our kids. That's not their job. The churches and the school's job is to complement what is already happening at the home.
Those three are working together.
Yes, the home is the launching pad.
Absolutely.
The home is the launching pad. So moms, dads, you are the first theologian that your kids are going to meet. When I say theologian, you don't need to know Greek and Hebrew, but guess what? You do need to know the God of the Bible. You do need to have a personal relationship with him, and your kids are looking to you.
Yes.
They want you to explain them what Scripture is all about. They want you to answer some of these questions. They love their teachers. They love their pastors. That's great. But they're looking to you. And I want to encourage moms and dads, be the theologian that your kids of the home, that your kids are looking to you. They may not verbalize it as such, but that's what they're looking to you as.
And I just can't tell you how many times I've heard this. Like, literally, well, I took him to church every week. Yeah. And they're just rejecting. I think we're thinking wrongly there. Mm-hmm. This question is not, did I take my kids to church every week, or did I take them to the Christian school Monday through Friday? The question has to become, did Jesus have residence in our house? Does Jesus have residence over every area of our life? Does Jesus have authority over what media is allowed in my home?
Yeah.
Does Jesus have authority over the discussions that are a part of our home? I mean, this is not a segmented life. I think if anything that you hear from this podcast, I hope you hear that following Jesus is not segmented to just our time at church or our time at school. He wants to be a part of our whole life.
Yeah.
That's a relationship. It's what it's about. And so this is so key.
I mean, you can't, I don't know. I just can't overstate how important it is the home is in absolutely everything else. We can't farm out the discipleship.
Absolutely. No. And so, maybe what are some takeaways from this? Yeah. Maybe you're listening and you're going, man, I agree.
Yeah.
I need to start thinking this way. Well, here's what I would say as a first step. Take these decisions before the Lord.
Yes.
Pray about them. Seek wise counsel. Okay. How can I go about making sure all of these areas are forming my child's life? I think that's the next step. And then actually make some steps to see that those 3 areas of your life are lining up.
And I will even say, in addition to all that, hold your traditional assumptions and be open to having them proven wrong. And when I say that, people say, well, it's easy for you to say, but I can't afford to put my kids in a Christian school, or I can't afford to do all that. Well, I will say, do some research. Just have those questions answered, because it is increasingly becoming, I want to say easier because it's a sacrifice. It's increasingly becoming
more accessible.
Christian education more accessible. And so I would just say, hey, do some research. Ask those closest to you. Ask those who would know.
Well, even do some research in your area. I mean,
yes.
We have I think it's almost every state in America listening to the podcast.
Yes,
Yay! I'm so excited. I think there's I don't know, Vermont or something. We need you. Okay. I don't remember.
Vermont.
I don't know if it's Vermont.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Okay.
I think you're right.
But, look at the laws even in Tennessee, for those folks who are listening in Tennessee, starting, I think it's next school year, there's going to be vouchers available to be used in Christian education. We live in the state of Indiana, one of the best states to have the opportunity to help fund Christian education. But even if you're saying, I don't live in one of those states that is friendly to Christian education, I'd say I would check with your local Christian school.
Oh, I would.
I'd do the research.
Yes.
Figure out a way. This is of such importance.
Oh, it's so huge
that it's worth doing the research. I would venture to guess that most things in life are worth.
And I'm not going to go off on this, but I just want to put this right here. This is why it's so important that we have Christian policymakers in government. This is just so huge. To make that accessible to people. We can't overlook that. So I just want to, not going to go off on
caveat.
that. Just
that's a whole
little caveat. But I'm telling you, the church, the home, the school, the Garden of Eden was the first place of worship. And your home should be the first place of worship, even before the church. Make your home a place of worship. That's the launching pad. And everything is connected to it, though, the school and the church. So...
Well, hopefully this has encouraged you. Hopefully it's challenged you. Maybe it's going to spur you on to research. Whatever it is, share, comment. Let us know, even your takeaways from today's episode. And thanks for tuning in. Stay connected. Visit our website, www.notonmywatch.co, and we will see you next time.
Yep, we will see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Not On My Watch podcast. You are a watchman for this time and hour. Don't forget to subscribe and rate this podcast wherever you listen. If you haven't already, head on over to our website, www.notonmywatch.co, for more resources from Jeff and Rochelle. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on the next episode. But until then, keep watchful.